As I said, the Pentecostal movement is booming. 26% increase around the world in the last decade, and that's certainly happening in Australia. What's the attraction? What do they have that the more trad churches lack? And are those joining up doing so for life? Well, tonight we talk about what's happening spiritually in Australia, as well as to someone you could say is a dissatisfied member of a particular Pentecostal church, Hillsong, which of course carries the banner of being the most entrepreneurial. Tanya Levin is a former member of the Hillsong Church and author of, and I'll hold it up so you can all see it, People in Glass Houses, an insider story of life in and out of Hillsong. And we also have Philip Hughes. Philip's a senior researcher at the Christian Research Association in Melbourne. He's a minister of the Uniting Church of Australia. That's that mob that sort of gobbled up the Congos, to which my father belonged, and the Methodists and a few others. Philip was a part of a research team who conducted a national study on spirituality amongst Australian young people in their teens and 20s, the spirit of Generation Y. And I welcome both Tanya and Philip to our little wireless program.
Thank you, Philip.
Good evening, Philip.
Tanya, you were brought up in Pentecostal churches, and you attended Hillsong before it was even well known.
Before it was famous, yeah.
Before it was even known as Hillsong?
Yeah, it was the Hills Christian Life Centre when I was there. I was there from 1985 until the early 90s, end of 89, 90, and it was the Hills Christian Life Centre then.
Anyone who, from the outside world who looks into a Pentecostal church is very aware of the physicality of the service. There's a lot of jumping around, waving the arms, and what's that about? What's going on?
It is very much a spirituality that has an embodiment. It's a very physical experience, the swaying of hands, the swaying of bodies, down to, people falling down on the floor, as you would have seen.
Is there speaking in tongues in Australia?
Oh, yes, there is. You're unlikely to actually witness it in the bigger churches because they're a little shyer of the attention and they know it's unusual, but it's alive and well.
You've got an interesting background, in fact surprising, because your parents migrated here from South Africa. Your mother was your mother was Jewish, a member of that diaspora, the South African Jewish diaspora.
Absolutely.
And your dad was English. They both became born-agains.
Yeah, they became born-again Christians. My father went to a Billy Graham crusade in the late 60s. And
here?
I believe in South Africa.
Right. And was overwhelmed
and
by...
he was saved there, and my mother was converted soon afterwards, and I got born into a Christian household.
You make the point that in the book that looking for the right church is like looking for the right therapist.
Yeah, it's not something you want to go through over and over and over because it's such a personal thing. You'll find that people won't want to shop around so much.
If I'm on the road to Damascus, but I've always been going the opposite direction, I'd go for the Catholics because they have terrific buildings, great cozies, smoking handbags, good music. You were never drawn to any of the major faiths?
Oh, goodness, no. We, as Pentecostals, were the one that had the truth above everybody else. We had no use for mainstream religion.
Did you think that they were heretics, blasphemers?
Mainstream churches. Yeah, I mean, we were told that this was really the only way you could get to heaven was through, a serious born-again relationship with Jesus. And, it's not something that the Catholic Church encourages, so you can't get to heaven.
Looking through the windows, and they're not stained glass so often, are they, in
No.
Pentecostal churches, I've also noticed that the very young congregation.
It is very young. It's very attractive to young people who I think are disenfranchised in a lot of instances anyway, simply by being teenagers, simply by being adolescents. And they get offered a very warm home family environment without as much of the responsibility.
I understand that you tried to live your life as sinlessly as possible. You really worked hard at this.
I did when I was much younger because I guess as my doubts started to grow, I started to fault myself. And so I tried to rid myself of every little scrap of sin that I could dig out of my 16-year-old
This sounds
life.
almost like spiritual anorexia.
It gets that way, it is. It is a really obsessive way to live, and it totally consumes people's lives. Yeah, it's very well put.
Were you happy?
Oh, of course you're happy.
You were happy. You weren't sort of consumed by guilt, original or otherwise?
It's a different form of happiness because it's an external happiness. So even if you may be individually unhappy, you know that as a part of the larger group, you're working towards something which is God ordained. So, how couldn't you be happy?
And yet you confess that you teetered on the edge of insanity.
Yeah, I got to the point I was so riddled with doubts and self-blame and to me the Bible as a text fell apart as well, and it became a document that I couldn't defend.
When you say that, do you mean you became conscious of the absurdities of literal...
biblical inconsistencies, hypocrisies.
The inconsistencies are a bit of a worry, aren't they?
It's enormous. The God of the Old Testament is certainly not the God that's being preached from the pulpits of modern churches.
So, and then you also twigged that there's a fair bit going on in terms of marketing, recruitment, money.
Well, that increased when I left what was then the Hills Christian Life Centre. The urge to donate, or the expectation for people to tithe was always there, but the pressure to give above and beyond the call of duty and to sacrifice your own personal time, that level of pressure was certainly growing when I left.
Tithing, before or after tax?
Absolutely before tax.
Is that right?
If you go back to Adam and Eve, had two sons in the Bible, and the one only brought his second fruits, but Abel brought his first fruits, and God was pleased with Abel and not Cain. And they can teach it all the way back there. So it's pre-tax income is what you're giving.
Yeah. What are your concerns overall about Hillsong? And are they just with Hillsong or with the Pentecostal churches in general?
I guess my concerns...
So, you get my gestures. I'm just reassuring my producers that I'm not totally insane, and of course I will.
My concerns lie at the heart of the service delivery that Hillsong is undertaking to offer the general community. So they're running rehabs for teenagers and for quote-unquote young women in trouble. And there's no way that these services are being regulated. We don't know what practice they're using, what they're teaching, the vulnerable and needy people that they're reaching out to, or whether it's just an opportunity for recruitment and further fundraising.
Let me now introduce my namesake, Philip, who's been working on a research project looking at spirituality and Generation Y. Who were they? How do you define Generation Y, Philip? I'm not up on the nomenclature of recent generations.
We focused on our research in young people between the ages of 13 and 24, 25. So I don't think you need to define Generation Y too exactly, but that was basically the age group we looked at.
Okay, and did you detect a significant increase in young people becoming more religious, or is that just an incorrect interpretation or observation?
In fact, it would appear that they're becoming less interested in religion and spirituality than previous generations.
Is that because a lot of them are sort of mopped up in some way by New Age attitudes?
No, we thought that might be the case, but there wasn't much evidence of that. It's not that either that they're sort of closed to religion and spirituality, it's just that it's down the bottom of their list of priorities, and there's not a great deal of interest amongst a lot of young people.
If religion and spirituality are down their hit list, what's more important? Clearly shopping.
Yes, that's quite a bit higher
the
up.
The opiate of the masses, isn't it now?
Yes. But it's having... the two things at the top of the list are very much having fun and enjoying life, and also having good friends.